Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Daniel Hodson. We warmly welcome the family of Private Nelson Wesley Barwise, whose story will be told shortly. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are now able, I'll ask you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Visitors, you may now be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's gallery. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Nelson Wesley Barwise. Nelson Wesley Barwise was born in Stawell, Victoria, on the 28th of August, 1891. Known as Nellie, he was the second youngest of 8 children born to Henry and Harriet Barwise, though only 6 of the children survived beyond childhood. The family remained living in Stawell throughout Nellie's childhood. He attended the local state school for his education and was a member of the cadets and the Stawell brass band. When Nellie was 10, his older brother Stanley died suddenly. A year later, his father also died. By the outbreak of the First World War, Nellie was living in Kellett Street in the Melbourne suburb of Northcote and working as a labourer. He was also engaged to be married to Miss Gladys Anderson, though his family do not appear to have known of his plans to wed. Nellie enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Melbourne on the 15th of May, 1915. He was assigned to the 2nd Reinforcements of the 23rd Australian Infantry Battalion with the rank of private and commenced initial training at Broadmeadows Camp. Nelson was the first of 3 Barwise brothers to enlist for service in the war. His brothers Albert and Henry both joined the Field Artillery Brigade in January 1917. Both Albert and Henry would survive the war and return to Australia in 1919. After 2 months of training, Private Nelson Barwise departed Melbourne in HMAT Demosthenes on the 16th of July 1915, bound first for Egypt and then the Gallipoli Peninsula. Nellie arrived on Gallipoli on the 2nd of October 1915 and joined the 23rd Battalion in defending the area around Lone Pine. On the 10th of December, as the Australian forces were preparing to evacuate from Gallipoli, Nellie was admitted to the hospital ship Oxfordshire, suffering from frostbite and trench feet. He spent the next month recovering in Egypt, complaining of swollen and painful feet and a lack of feeling in the big toe. Nellie returned to duty in mid-January and was posted to the 2nd Divisional Base Depot. While at the depot, he ran into trouble with military authorities, first for being absent without leave, and then for obtaining a railway pass under false pretences. After being transferred to the Australian Training Depot in early July, Nelson finally proceeded to join the fighting on the Western Front on the 2nd of August 1916. He arrived first in England and was taken on strength of the 2nd Training Battalion to prepare for the fighting that lay ahead. After one more run-in with military authorities for disobeying standing orders, Nellie proceeded overseas to France in late September. He rejoined Bravo Company of the 23rd Battalion on the 2nd of October 1916, and from there passed a bitter winter in northern France with his unit. After the relatively quieter winter, the Germans' army retreat to the Hindenburg Line in the spring of 1917 launched the Australian forces into action once again. By mid-March, the 23rd Battalion were enmeshed in bitter fighting around Norel in northern France. Alternating between the front line and the vanguard, the battalion steadily advanced on their objectives before being ordered to help capture Norel early in the morning on the 20th of March. The enemy held their defensive position, resulting in heavy casualties before the battalion established their own defensive line outside the town. The Germans' defence trapped many men of the battalion under heavy artillery fire in broad daylight. By the end of the fighting, the battalion had sustained 117 casualties, including 6 killed in action. One of the dead was Private Nelson Wesley Barwise, killed either by a machine gun bullet through the heart or by shrapnel from a shell. He was 25 years old. It took several days for the Australians to capture the position where Nelson fell. Although eyewitnesses' report vary, it appears that Nelson's body was buried by Australian soldiers somewhere between 3 days and 3 weeks after his death, somewhere close to where he was killed. When news of his death reached Australia, commemorative notices flooded into the local papers from his loved ones, including his loving and sorrowing fiancée, Gladys. His mother submitted a short poem in his honour on behalf of herself and his 4 surviving siblings. It read, "He was fighting for his country. He answered duty's call. His friends, his home, his comfort. He sacrificed them all." Although a wooden cross was erected over the grave, efforts after the end of fighting to locate his final resting place proved unsuccessful. Nelson Barwise is commemorated today on the Australian Memorial at Villa Bretonneux, alongside the names of over 10,000 Australians who were killed during the First World War and who have no known grave. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Nelson Wesley Barwise, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.